Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Barasch of Barasch McGarry, and I want to welcome you to this evening's webinar on the 9/11 community and skin cancer. I'm joined this evening with my partner, Dom Penson, my partner, Dana Cohen, my partner, Lee London, and my associate, James Steiner, attorneys who work so compassionately for the 9/11 community. And we're also lucky to have a retired police officer from New Jersey, Valerie Velasquez-Stetz, and who's also a skin cancer survivor who'll tell you about her experiences. And the star of our show this evening is Dr. Gregory Daniels from California. And Dr. Daniels, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I also want to thank Cancer Care for introducing you. We're going to start with a short video that will set the table.
The first thing that I hear from the non-first responder community in Lower Manhattan is, I'm sick, but I don't deserve anything. I'm not a first responder. I just lived here. I just studied here. I just went to school here. I just raised a family here. Your presence here was an act of courage and resilience. The first responders, I'm in awe. But I also am in great awe of those who came back to a war-torn neighborhood that was clearly toxic. We knew it, but you stayed anyway, and you allowed this area to grow and to become the hub. But it's your courage and your resilience that brought this place back. So please, I urge you, access what you are owed.
Over the last decade, we have all fought very hard so that everyone has access to the health care that they need. It is very important that every community member who lived anywhere south of Houston understands that you are covered. You are part of the group of people that have guaranteed health care if you have a 9/11 related disease.
I was on my way to work when the first plane hit. I was working for Goldman Sachs. I actually worked for them for a total of 21 years. I always thought that those programs were geared for the firemen and the police officers, but I'm one of the victims of that.
So we have taken on, with all of these advocates here, the task of trying to get everyone to understand that they have rights, and it is imperative that they sign up.
One of the really surprising things about our research is that an event in 2001 can continue to have echoes 17 and 18 years later, such that it is as though never smokers are smoking 2 packs a day.
My law firm represents over 15,000 people in the 9/11 community. And the majority right now are first responders, but every single day we hear from more and more survivors because we're doing this outreach. Basically, to be entitled to compensation, you need to prove that you were below Canal Street or on the Fresh Kills landfill, either caught in the dust cloud on 9/11 or for 24 hours during the month of September 2001, or for 80 hours, which is just 2 full work weeks between 9/11 and May 30th of 2002. And you need to get 2 people to sign an affidavit attesting to the fact that I saw him. I worked next to Joe. I went to school next to Francis. That's all it takes. There's a reason why my firm takes all this so personally. I have 6 young people who work for me who have lost a parent or a spouse as a result of World Trade Center toxins. 9 people in my law firm, including me, are cancer survivors. The information you get from us is going to be compassionate, and it's our pleasure to help you.
So Dr. Daniels, welcome again. I'd like to start with, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, I'm a medical oncologist. Grew up in California, but spent some time in the Midwest. And then I've been in San Diego since 2005. And my practice is mainly focused in advanced skin cancers, including melanoma and non-melanoma skin cancers. My intention was to just give a little bit of an overview because we don't all, thankfully, know skin cancers, but they're out there and they are the most common cancers that we will face. As we know, over time, we've seen the incidence of cancers changing, and a lot of that is due to changes in our lifestyle, changes in our environment, and as such, some are readily preventable, to a high degree, such as the majority of lung cancers. We can probably bring down with our continued efforts on smoke and cessation. And then others are responding to our early detection strategies, such as colorectal cancer, where if you don't want a colonoscopy, that's fine. I totally understand that. But there are now some less invasive tests that are coming online that are helping find cancers at an earlier point. And that's kind of the holy grail, is both prevention and, if you can't prevent it, early detection, because then the outcomes are so much better. And that's true for skin cancers too. And I list here the three general skin cancers that are the top three, but there are tens of others. Basal cells, despite being the most common cancer in the world and being literally right in front of our noses, sometimes it's right on our noses, we have more than 4 million basal cells diagnosed every year in the United States. And the incidence is just continuing to increase. And again, a lot of that can be traced back to environmental exposures, and specifically for both basal cell and squamous cell, it's directly proportional to UV exposure. So the more sun damage that our skin accumulates over time, the more of these basal cells and squamous cells are coming up. There's so many basal cells that it's become impossible for us to track them. In fact, we don't have a great database for them. So that's why I have to use a thing like greater than 4 million cases of basal cells, because we actually don't really know. The second most common cancer is squamous cell carcinoma. And you might have heard of squamous cell carcinoma of other parts of the body. Squamous cells can happen in the lung, for example, or the throat. But squamous cell cancer of the skin is the second most common malignancy out there. And unlike basal cells, it does have a higher tendency to spread. And so advanced cutaneous squamous cell has become, as the incidence goes up, more of a problem. And I'll get to that in a second. And then there's melanomas. So melanomas happen on the skin, but they also happen in other places where pigment cells are, and that's in the mucosal surfaces or the eyes. And melanomas spread early. That's the thing to know really about melanomas. So all these have the same strategy, which is see spot change, see a dermatologist or a primary provider. Oops. So I'll talk about cutaneous squamous cells because, again, it's actually one of those that we do try to track in terms of numbers because we stage it. And I mentioned UV radiation, but also many other things factor into cutaneous squamous cell. Smoking. Turns out male gender is a risk factor for cutaneous squamous cell. It may be confounded by the fact that men are accumulating more UV damage than women typically, because that's not to stereotype completely, but men tend not to wear sunscreen as much as females, or pay attention to their skin as much. Medications is a huge area where we're seeing the influence of, say, treating one healthcare problem and then finding out that it's influencing the balance of power in our skin. And we're seeing cutaneous squamous cells come up due to some medications, as well as the overlap with other medical conditions, such as diabetes, for example, is a risk factor for developing more skin cancers. And when it does get advanced, because I think sometimes basal cells and squamous cells are a little bit underrated, ignored, if you will, for being serious diseases. But in advanced cutaneous squamous cell, people are dying. And, again, it's kind of tragic. It's not that we have to send people to colonoscopy to discover a skin cancer. It's more just paying attention to your skin. So, and just some backgrounds on the biology of both basal cells and squamous cells, and even melanomas, is that some of the things that we've learned about them have given us insights into therapies, and that is that they're highly mutated tumors, which a proportion of them have inflammation as part of how they're growing up. What do I mean by inflammation? Big topic, not for this talk, but if you wanted to, look into things that you got your green tumor cell in the middle, and it's surrounded. When we have a cancer, it's not just cancer cells, but there are a whole bunch of what we call supporting cells. And these cells are all talking to each other and figuring out what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. And what we'd like our immune system to do and our body to do is to just spontaneously reject the tumor. That does happen. But when we see cancer, it's at the end of this process where that tumor's figured out a way to block that immune response. And so taking those insights into how these skin cancers are evolving through their development, medications have been developed to address some of these steps. And I'm going to just quickly, hopefully not influence your dinner appetite, but quickly go through a quick case of an advanced cutaneous squamous cell where this gentleman unfortunately had a tumor that crept under the skin, and this can happen. At the time of presentation, we didn't have great therapies, and he ended up having antibody infusions of a medication that blocks the growth, but it didn't really work too well, and it gave him side effects. Ended up having some palliative radiation, but he just continued to progress. But understanding kind of the biology as research goes on, what we realized was that if you target those immune cells that are sitting there not recognizing the tumor, and this is just an example of a drug that probably most people have heard of, pembrolizumab, otherwise known as Keytruda, the Jimmy Carter drug in melanoma. And he got just a few doses of this stuff before he came back in and said, "This stuff is magic." And really has changed a disease before, advanced cutaneous squamous cell, that was not really treatable outside of surgery and radiation, to now for a lot, not all patients, some better treatment options. And so he had a few years of good disease control with that therapy. Melanoma, that is also increasing every year. You just see kind of the age distribution there. We think of it as all these skin cancers as being common in older people, but I'll just say that one of the fastest growing people our age is 20 to 40 that are women, that the incidence is going up there. And so every year we see more and more cases of melanoma. And for a while, our death rates were going up. But because of the science of trying to understand things over the last decade, a lot of great work has changed that bottom curve when we were looking at outcomes with old style chemotherapies and looking at survival over time, and that's actually months, that at each iteration of our understanding, whether it's immune therapies or targeted therapies, we've been able to raise the survival up, and actually getting to a point where almost the majority of metastatic melanoma patients can expect to respond to current therapies and to have hopefully years of disease control. Totally remains challenges, and that's why I circle that 40% where we're struggling for advanced disease. And all these things, advanced disease, I'll just go back to Michael's comment, that what we want to do is to not have advanced disease, to figure out ways of getting people in early, to taking those steps to either prevent cancer from the beginning, healthy lifestyles, or early detection where it can be taken off. And that just takes a little bit of recognition of what these tumors look like. So with that, I'll release the screen.
Well, you mentioned UV is obviously one of the things that we all think about. Plus, we all think about family history when anybody gets cancer. Because the World Trade Center Health Program keeps meticulous data, we know from the National Institute of Health that all the 68 cancers linked to the World Trade Center toxins, there's a 19 to 41% increase compared to the general public. Now, you mentioned that basal cell was 30 to 40%. All of us are going to get that. Well, the 9/11 community is even more likely. And that's why there is a presumption that if you have any of these cancers, including skin cancer, no matter your family history, no matter whether you were a sun worshiper on the beach of California and then you came to New York and you were exposed to the toxins, that cancer is presumed linked. So you're going to be hearing that word presumption a lot as we go along. I'd like to talk to Officer Velasquez-Stetz. Can I call you Val, please?
Please.
Okay. So Val, I appreciate. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I was a Jersey City police officer during 9/11, and I had probably 10 years on the job at that time. And, there was never a dull moment in Jersey City, but that day was a little different. So, later on, I guess, so that was 2001 and 2008, the beginning of 2008, I went to a skin doctor only because my sister actually was bugging me because I had it was like a little ball above my eye and it was ugly, girls don't want that stuff on their face. So I just went, I guess, because I just didn't like it. I never, ever once thought that it would be cancerous. I didn't even think it looked like that. It just looked like a skin tag, but it was a hard skin tag, not a soft.
And what did it turn out to be?
And it was a basal cell.
Did the World Trade Center Health Program certify it as a 9/11 illness?
Yes, they did. I didn't even understand it. I didn't know until I met Michael himself, and he spoke to me about it because actually I wasn't even enrolled at the time because I was one of those, typical police officers, like, let the other guys get it, not me. I don't need it. I don't, deserve it or whatever because, these guys were dying, of serious cancer, melanoma cancers, lung cancer, kidney cancer, colon cancer, all different types of cancers. So I was like, what I have is nothing compared to that. So why should I enroll? Let them do it. So I did, but I have to tell you, when I did go to the dermatologist and they said, well, let me just send this to a lab. And I said, why? And they were just like, well, 99% it's nothing because of your heritage. My mom is Italian descent and my dad is Puerto Rican descent. So, we have olive complexion and, they said I would be fine. But then 2 weeks later, they called me and, said that C word that nobody wants to hear.
Doctor, I saw you nodding your head. Have you heard stories like that before?
Sure.
And you bring up a good point, Val, and that is none of us are immune.
All right, well, we've been talking about the health program, so let's go to our first slide. So you heard Senator Gillibrand talking about the MAP and Houston Street. Everyone should know we're not here just to talk about the Victim Compensation Fund. We're also talking about the free nationwide health program. So if you were below Houston Street, or in Western Brooklyn, or at the Fresh Kills landfill, you're entitled to the benefits of the health program. If you were below Canal Street in Lower Manhattan, or at the Fresh Kills landfill, you are also eligible for the Victim Compensation Fund. This is really the shocking thing. While over 80% of the responders have enrolled in the health program, about 7% of the civilians have. So that's why we do this outreach. That's why we're doing this webinar. We want you to help us spread the word that office workers, there were 300,000 office workers and 25,000 downtown residents and 50,000 students and teachers. All of them are entitled to the same free health care as the police officers and the cops. All right, Dom, would you take us through the list of the most common illnesses that have been presumed linked to these toxins?
Sure, thanks. And hello, everybody. Well, you see the list in front of you. And you've heard the numbers that there are 68 cancers that have been linked to the toxic air. Skin cancer is the #1 cancer, the most frequent cancer that we see. With men, #2 on the list, prostate cancer is the second most common that we see. With women, after skin cancer, it's breast cancer. But really, we see so many of the 68 cancers. We see a surprisingly high number of brain cancers, of organ cancers, of blood cancers. We see all of these things, and they're all on the list because the NIH has collected data that shows that there is a higher incidence of these cancers among the 9/11 community than the population at large normally. It doesn't matter if there is a family history of cancer. It doesn't matter whether there are other factors that may have played a role in your cancer. It doesn't matter if your doctor doesn't think there's a connection or can't say that there's a connection. As long as you have one of the illnesses that has been linked to the toxic air and you were in the exposure zone for the requisite period of time, that is it. You are eligible for benefits. You are eligible for health benefits, and you are eligible for compensation.
Let's see, James, would you talk to us about deadlines now for personal injuries?
Absolutely. So historically, the Victim Compensation Fund had registration deadlines in place that said a person had to register with the VCF within 2 years of the date that they were certified with the 9/11 related condition. Unfortunately, many people were certified years ago and were unaware. They had no knowledge that their condition had actually been officially linked to 9/11 exposure. So once they finally realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm eligible to make a claim, the registration deadline has passed. The special master of the Victim Compensation Fund realized that many people were unfortunately barred from making claims when they should be eligible. So she extended that deadline, and you see it here in red on your screen. The VCF has moved this 2-year deadline back to July 29th of 2021. So really, it's coming up around the corner, which is why we're doing everything we can to spread the word now. You saw it in the video. The office worker in downtown Manhattan didn't realize that he had to register and that his skin cancer was a covered condition. And there are still so many people that don't. That's why we were thrilled to see we had such a strong turnout for this webinar today. Even if you don't have skin cancer, but you know somebody who does, make sure you let them know that there's a deadline upcoming and that there are people who are available to help inform them about the deadline and help them register if they do qualify for a claim. This deadline also applies to families who have lost somebody due to a 9/11 related illness like a melanoma. And Dom and Dana will tell you a little bit more about that deadline in just a minute.
And thanks, James. I want to make it clear that thanks to John Stewart, and I really do have to thank John because he shamed Congress into doing the right thing. But the Victim Compensation Fund and the health program have both been extended to 2090. So this is supposed to take care of all of us for the rest of our lives. But I just want to make sure everybody understands these programs are going to outlive us all. It's going to be until 2090, but you must register within 2 years of your certification or within 2 years of your loved one's death. We have to mention the fact that COVID has really decimated the 9/11 community. We've lost over 100 of our clients since last March to COVID. And in each case, it was COVID plus a respiratory illness or COVID plus something that maybe they had chemotherapy, which destroyed their immune system. So it's no joke, even though the CDC is really loosening things, please, we urge you, get out there, get the vaccination, wear a mask until you are completely vaccinated. Lee, would you take us through the health program benefits, please?
Sure. And thank you everyone for joining. I've been doing this work for 9/11, for the 9/11 community for the past 8 years. And what I've noticed in the past 2 to 3 years is a huge outbreak in skin cancer related claims. The dust takes that long to develop. And that's why it's so important that you see your local dermatologist and anybody who you might have worked with, lived with, they qualify as well. When I speak to people about skin cancer, they don't even think it's cancer. They're like, oh, I'm like, have you ever been diagnosed with any cancer? And they say no. And then I say, what about basal? What about squamous? So, oh yeah, I had that. That is something that we have to know about. That is a 9/11 related condition. And the more people in the program, the more other conditions can be added as well. Skin cancer wasn't covered in 2012. It was covered after 2012. So you might have worked with someone next to you that could have passed away from melanoma in 2008, and their family qualifies for the Victim Compensation Fund. And the deadline that is approaching will time bar that family from making a claim, because if you know somebody that passed away longer than 2 years ago, after July, their family could be time barred. And with the World Trade Center Health Program, it's an amazing program to be a part of, but they do not check you for skin cancer. So I speak to many of my clients and I go, okay, have you been examined? Have you been going to the health program? Yes. And I'm like, they're not checking you for skin cancer there. So you must go to your local dermatologist and you must get a full body skin check yearly. This isn't something to do every 5 years just to do it. This is something that, you know, if you were in the 9/11 community, you heard from the doctor, you heard from Michael, your percentage is higher of obtaining this type of diagnosis. So we want to make sure you protect yourself. But the World Trade Center Health Program offers amazing free annual medical exams. They will pay for out-of-pocket medical expenses, deductibles, you know, so if you move away, if you are a snowbird and you go to Florida, you can treat at the health program in Florida. The health program in North Carolina is the third biggest population of 9/11 community members.
Great. Dana, will you take us through the benefits of the Victim Compensation Fund for personal injury claims?
Sure. So the Victim Compensation Fund is a program that was created to provide compensation to people who pass away or get sick as a result of their exposure to 9/11 toxins. So you heard about the World Trade Center Health Program, which is the medical program for victims. This is the compensation program. And the benefits are substantial. You can think of them as really divided into three categories. The VCF will award pain and suffering. The VCF will award lost earnings. And the VCF will also reimburse out-of-pocket medical expenses and household services where appropriate. The pain and suffering awards can vary from anywhere from $20,000 to $340,000. It depends upon the condition. It depends upon the severity of the condition. And as for lost earnings, it'll vary from case to case, depending upon the earning capacity of the individual. So for people who are disabled as a result of their 9/11 condition and are unable to work, the VCF will recognize that. And so awards can be in the tens to the hundreds of thousands to sometimes the millions of dollars.
You know, Val, you made an interesting point when you were speaking about how you almost felt guilty making a claim because you didn't have a life-threatening cancer. And at one point, the Victim Fund was running out of money. But as we said, thanks to Jon Stewart, right, Congress has permanently extended and fully funded this program. And this is why we're encouraging everyone, even if you're currently healthy, secure your proof of presence now, because that company that you worked for 20 years ago, it may not be in existence in 10 or 20 years. God forbid you get cancer then. So you want to get that employment verification letter or your school transcript or your affidavits from your coworkers now while they're still around. Val, I'm sure you've seen this in Jersey City. You know, a lot of guys have retired, moved away. You lose track.
Right. And they can't remember what happened 20 days ago, let alone 20 years ago. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to, they're too lazy to do the paperwork. So I actually have written things down for that. You know, I said, listen, I'll fill that. Just give me the information and I'll fill that for you.
Don, would you talk to us a little bit about the death benefits and the deadlines that everybody should know about?
Sure, absolutely. With respect to the death benefits that are available to families, they include the same categories of damages that Dana described for personal injury awards. So again, there are benefits for the pain and suffering of the loved one who passed away before they passed away for having a disease that caused their death. So there's a pain and suffering award for that. There are direct awards for a surviving spouse and any surviving other dependents, such as children or somebody else who is a dependent of the deceased. They're entitled to a direct award each. There are also awards for lost earnings. So if a person's career was cut short by their death, their family is entitled to recover for the lost earnings that that person would have earned in the future had they not died prematurely. There are also awards called replacement services awards, which is compensation for a decedent's household, for the members of the household, for the loss of the services that the person used to perform around the house. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, yard work, car work, doing the taxes, all the things that we do for one another when we share a household. They have a value, the VCF recognizes it, and it provides compensation when the next of kin lose those services. And finally, the VCF reimburses funeral expenses. So all of that is covered. And just as Dana said about personal injury awards, these categories of damages can add up to very substantial awards in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes in the millions of dollars.
Thank you, Don. James, would you just take us sum up basically what our message to everybody is now, and then we're going to take questions.
Sure. So the biggest thing is, what can you do right now to protect yourself moving forward and really spread the word? And that's number one. Like we were saying earlier, the survivor community is so underrepresented in the health program. People are just unaware of not just the free healthcare, but also the compensation available for skin cancers and other 9/11 related illnesses. So one, spread the word. You should also register for the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, because you don't necessarily need to file a claim now, but registering will, one, preserve your right to make a claim, or two, if God forbid you were to pass away from a 9/11 related illness, it would allow your family to make a claim without having to worry about the time requirements and the registration deadlines that we discussed earlier. You also heard Dana mention the importance of getting your evidence now. The truth is, businesses close, witnesses move away, they change phone numbers, or worse, they pass away. So what will you do if you're not able to prove your presence? That's why it's so important to use now as the opportunity to secure your evidence, so when you need it, it will be there. And also, as you heard the doctor say, early detection is the best medicine. You definitely want to see a doctor or a dermatologist before you have to see someone who specializes in oncology. So I certainly hope you do that. And also, get a will, do a healthcare proxy, and update your beneficiaries. You will make it so much easier for your family to make a claim on your behalf if, God forbid, something were to happen to you. So I know, a lot of people want to do this. They scramble to do it when they get that, oh my God moment. You heard Val say the C word, and then, everything starts to change. You can make it easier for everyone, including yourself, if you just try to do that upfront and get ahead of it before it's actually an issue.
And James, would you let everybody know how much we charge our clients for doing a will and healthcare proxy?
Great point. It's absolutely free. It's part of what our mission is to give back and help how we can. So if you're interested in discussing that, we do free wills for our clients, and we will help you and your family set yourselves up and basically be in a position to make the process as easy as possible down the road if, God forbid, something were to happen.
All right. Thank you. There's so much help available. Our firm is one of several that is always there for you. So please don't, just stand by and think that there's nothing I can do. There is something you can do. Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We'll send you this information. Please feel free to share it.